Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to take a look at how to paint on the surfaces using a mouse as a paintbrush. So as you see, I'm using the mouse and painting on the various objects. Also, if you see that the brush size is varied on various objects. So let's take a quick look at how this is done. First of all, in the scene, we need a couple of objects. So the object will have a paint script with the brush size defined and a paint shader. Also notice that we have removed the primitive colliders and added mesh colliders. And finally, we have to make sure that the shader on the object is capable of lerping between two values, which can be color values or texture values based on an alpha map. So let's understand the concept. As we paint on the surface in the foreground, in the background we will paint on a texture. This texture is created at runtime and can be called as a render texture. Hence, we have to make sure that all the objects have properly been unwrapped. Now here we have to understand the concept of alpha map. An alpha map will have every pixel colored either white or black. If the pixel is white, the pixel will be rendered. If the pixel is black, the pixel won't be rendered. Hence, our shader is going to use this to identify which color to render on the object. So let's talk about the paint script that we have on the objects. The paint script has a brush size that a user can set for every object. Apart from that, we are going to have a paint shader. The paint shader will be dynamically added to a paint material. The mHit variable stores the raycast hit position when the mouse hits the surface where the brush is going to paint on the surface. Then we need a render texture that will be used as an alpha map, and we need one temporary render texture. And of course, we need the object material which is present on that specific object. So let's go through the start function. First of all, if the paint shader is not there, then we will disable the script. If the paint shader is there, then we'll create a new material, and in that material we'll pass on the shader. Then we create a new render texture of size 1024 by 1024. Then we have a temporary render texture which should be of the same size as the earlier texture. Next we get the current material that is applied on the object, and that material should support a property called paint. Now this property will contain the alpha map that we are going to generate dynamically at runtime. Let's take a look at the update function. In the update function, we are checking if the user has clicked on the mouse. Then we check the point which is underneath that mouse cursor. If it has hit the object which is the current object, then we set the brush size of the specific object to the paint material. And the most important thing is we need to get the UVs that have been hit. The next thing is we copy whatever the current paint texture is into a temporary texture so that we don't lose that data. And then we copy the temporary texture into a new paint texture or the previously had alpha map, and we add to that using the paint material. So now that we understand what is the use of this paint material, we should look at its shader. So this is the paint shader. The hit chords UV will help us identify where to paint, and the brush size will help us to identify how many pixels to paint. Now in the fragment function, the main texture is the texture which is been passed from graphics.bit function as the first argument. This is the temporary texture which has the old alpha map values. So we are taking that and keeping all the colors of that specific texture into a color variable. Then we do the calculation as to where the brush has hit and which pixels to color. That's why we are doing the distance between the current UVs and the hit chord UVs. Once we get the distance, we are saturating it so that it clamps between the values 0 to 1, and then we power it up by the brush size. As we know that this is an alpha map, we just need to add a float value because it has to be 0 or 1. We don't need the other values like red, green and blue colors. And then we return this value by saturating it, which means we are clamping it between 0 and 1. Now let's take a look at the object shader. The basic use of this object shader is to lerp between two values, which means using the alpha map values, we either render out the base color or the paint color. Hence, we have two properties. One is the base color, which is color, and second is the paint color, which is paint color. We are adding up these properties in the shader, and also we are defining a paint texture. Now this paint texture, if you recollect, has been passed on to this material right when the script starts. So as you see, this is a surface shader. In this shader, we have made very minor tweaks. The first thing is that we are storing the color value, which is the base color, in the variable called C, and then we are storing the value of the texture in a variable called paint. And then we are lerping between the base color and the paint color using the alpha map value, which is stored in the paint. So that is it. I have tried to make it as simple as possible. You can also add maps to this. If you want to lerp between two maps, you can do that, because eventually texture maps hold color information. I hope you like this video. Thank you for watching.